great spiritual favor and festival which he desires to grant it. For he never mortifies except to give life, nor humbles except to exalt, which comes to pass shortly afterwards. Then, according as was the dark and horrible purgation which the soul suffered, so is the fruition now granted it of a wondrous and delectable spiritual contemplation, sometimes so lofty that there is no language to describe it. But the spirit has been greatly refined by the preceding horror of the evil spirit, in order that it may be able to receive this blessing. For these spiritual visions belong to the next life rather than to this. And when one of them is seen, this is a preparation for the next. This is to be understood with respect to occasions when God visits the soul by the instrumentality of a good angel, wherein, as has been said, the soul is not so totally in darkness and in concealment that the enemy cannot come within reach of it. But when God himself visits it, then the words of this line are indeed fulfilled, and it is in total darkness and in concealment from the enemy that the soul receives these spiritual favors of God. The reason for this is that, as His Majesty dwells substantially in the soul, where neither angel nor devil can attain to an understanding of that which comes to pass, they cannot know the intimate and secret communications which take place there between the soul and God. These communications, since the Lord himself works them, are wholly divine and sovereign, for they are all substantial touches of divine union between the soul and God, in one of which the soul receives a greater blessing than in all the rest, since this is the loftiest degree of prayer in existence. For these are the touches that the bride entreated of him in the songs, saying, Osculetur me, osculo oris sui, kiss me with the kisses of your mouth. Since this is a thing which takes place in such close intimacy with God, whereto the soul desires with such yearnings to attain, it esteems and longs for a touch of this divinity more than all the other favors which God grants it. Wherefore, after many such favors have been granted to the bride in said songs, of which she has sung therein, she is not satisfied, but entreats him for these divine touches, saying, Who shall give you to me, my brother, that I might find you alone without, sucking the breasts of my mother, so that I might kiss you with the mouth of my soul, and that thus no man should despise me, or make bold to attack me. By this she denotes the communication with God, which God himself alone makes to her, as we are saying, far from all the creatures, and outside their knowledge. For this is meant by alone and without, sucking, etc., that is, drying up and draining the breasts of the desires and affections of the sensual part of the soul. This takes place when the soul, in intimate peace and delight, has fruition of these blessings with liberty and of spirit, and without the sensual part being able to hinder it, or the devil to thwart it by means thereof. And then the devil would not make bold to attack it, for he would not reach it, neither could he attain to an understanding of these divine touches in the substance of the soul, in the loving substance of God. To this blessing none attains, save through intimate purgation and detachment and spiritual concealment from all that is creature. It comes to pass in the darkness, as we have already explained at length, and as we say with respect to this line. The soul is in concealment and in hiding, in the which hiding place, as we have now said, it continues to be strengthened in union with God through love. Wherefore it sings this in the same phrase, saying, in darkness and in concealment. When it comes to pass that those favors are granted to the soul in concealment, that is, as we have said, in spirit only, the soul is wont, during some of them, and without knowing how this comes to pass, to see itself so far withdrawn and separated, according to the higher and spiritual part, from the sensual and lower portion, that it recognizes in itself two parts so distinct from each other that it believes that the one has nothing to do with the other, but that the one is very remote and far withdrawn from the other. And in reality, in a certain way, this is so, for the operation is now wholly spiritual, and the soul receives no communication in its sensual part. In this way, the soul gradually becomes wholly spiritual, and in this hiding place of unitive contemplation, its spiritual desires are to a great degree removed and purged away. And thus, speaking of its higher part, the soul then says in this last line, "My house being now at rest." End of chapter 23.